do not confuse a target with a commitment. A target is inspirational. It gets us to think out of the box. A commitment is the minimum we have to deliver.
Have you ever wondered what makes some entrepreneurs successful and others not? Perhaps you haven't reached the level of success that you want, but you know that you could if given the right framework or way to accomplish it. Have you ever wondered what makes some entrepreneurs different than others and how they get outsized results? That is what we're going to be talking about today. Our guest today told me that the best entrepreneurs don't have the best starting conditions, but they have the best starting beliefs. And that is what sets them apart. So today I am inviting you to have a starting belief that will set you up so differently than the point you have come up until today. So I want to start even before we get to beliefs. So before we get to your starting beliefs, I want you ready for a breakthrough. Until I couldn't think of somebody better to navigate this breakthrough. So I would like to welcome to the show, Dr. Alan Barnard. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
I am, we met a bit ago. So I'm gonna tell my side of the story, and then you could color it in because okay. So I was invited to speak at an AI and efficiency mastermind, and I was invited to speak around marketing. And so I got an Uber down to Malibu, and I had arrived shamefully a couple minutes late. But when you're working at an AI efficiency mastermind, they were starting on the dot. Yeah. And so I come in like maybe 3 minutes late, and we've already started, and it was in a home. It was in a private home. It was very beautiful. Yeah. And in the back row, I was like, I'm gonna scoot in, and I'm gonna get past. And so as I'm walking in, I see a gentleman seated. And you kindly stand up to make room for me to get to the chair, and me and all of my 5'4" on a good day magic, I'm like looking up, and I gaze up at this 6'6" gentleman, and I was like, oh, hello, nice to meet you. I feel like a munchkin right about now. And that's what started our original conversation. And so tell me, how did you get to that same mastermind?
So I got introduced through a good friend of mine, Jay Abraham, to Nick Sonnenberg. Okay. Who runs that mastermind.
Yes.
And the two of us has become very good friends, and he's invited me to attend a mastermind as a guest speaker. So I often contribute and talk about the things that I'm really passionate about.
Okay. So for those of you guys who remember, Nick Sonnenberg was a guest on my podcast. I'll be sure to link it in the show notes. So you and I are at this mastermind, and I believe it was kismet, and we were supposed to sit next to each other. And on one of the breaks, you start asking what I do, and I'm asking what you do. And you kindly bring out from your side bag a children's book. And you said, this is for your daughter. Yeah. And I thought to myself, okay, I don't know who this guy is, but I am about him. Anybody that brings me gifts for my kids, I was like, this is amazing. Okay, so that's a little bit of context. So people on the show know that I don't bring anybody in who I don't know personally or their work has not impacted me directly. So after we met and after we have these conversations at the mastermind, I go on a deep dive of your work. And you had mentioned casually, well, if you ever want me to be on your podcast, and I get that suggestion all the time from people. Yeah. But it was after I did the deep dive that I said, Dr. Allen needs to be on this show, because here is why I wanted you here. Your goal is to help entrepreneurs make better decisions faster. Okay, but in order for us to make better decisions faster, you invite us to say, hey, what's limiting us? So right now, Dr. Allen's question is, what is limiting you? So let's put that in your mind. What's limiting you? And then you said the most powerful limiting belief is that's not possible. Mm-hmm. Okay. So can you share a story about a time that you spoke to a group of coal miners about reaching their goal, and they told you, well, it's not possible?
I literally get cold chills every time I tell the story. So thanks for the reminder. So imagine this, I'm a theory of constraints expert. Okay,
a theory of constraints.
Yeah,
okay,
so
got it.
It's basically the simple idea that doesn't matter how many links there are in your chain, your system, there's always only one weakest link. Whether there's 3 links or 30,000 links, always only one weakest link. Find it, focus on it, because that's how you strengthen the whole chain. Right? So I'm there on invitation, whole day, to give a lecture about theory of constraints, how to help this mind find their bottleneck, etc. And I walk in, and the energy is horrible. I don't know if I'm sensitive to that, right?
Same here.
I'm a big guy, but I'm sensitive to energy. And so I asked around before we start, and I say, what's going on? And they say, it's terrible. There's a crisis here. They said, Dr. Barnard, we should have let you know. We probably should have canceled the session, but, it was too late. And I said, what's going on? And I said, look, we have a target to achieve 12 million tons for the year. So simple, 1 million per month, right? We are at month 4 now, and we are at 3 million. We're already 1 million behind. And if we continue, we'll end up at 9 million. And most of the people here will probably be fired. So I take this big gulp. Holy shoot, okay. Take away the whole 200 slide deck PowerPoint that I wanted to present. And I said, okay, I think I have a sense of what I need to do. And we started the session and got introduced. And I said, I had the slide deck prepared, but I realized that there's a crisis. And I'm going to see if we can get through the crisis.
Can we pause here?
Yeah.
Okay. So I can't help but feel. So you know how you said you're sensitive to energy? Mm-hmm. I am sensitive to energy. And when I'm hearing this story, I can't help but feel that there might be somebody who's watching or listening and they are at their own crisis. They're at a point of crisis. Yeah. And so what you just said was if they don't hit this goal, more than half of the people in the room will lose their jobs.
Yeah.
So they're in there saying the end is coming. And when we're in that point of crisis, and you said, I've been invited to talk about this theory of constraints. Mm-hmm. Okay. There is somebody who's watching and says, I am constrained and I am in a crisis.
Right.
And so I really want to personalize that this is not about this keynote deck that you threw away 200 slides. This is about you seeing the humanity of somebody feeling like the end is near.
Yep.
And so for people who are watching or listening and you feel like I see the end and I don't think it's possible. Yep. That's where I wanted to contextualize.
Absolutely.
So you step up on the stage and you say,
yeah, so I think just resonating with that point is that we all go from crisis sometimes, right? We feel that we are falling behind, exactly like this mine has. It could be that I've fallen behind in the targets that I've set for myself or committed to my investors if I'm a startup, or just in life, I feel like I'm falling behind, and the more I fall behind, the more impossible it feels to catch up. So getting back to this idea of impossible, right? So I'm going to link that back. So I get on stage and I said, before we start, I want to understand the problem, right? So got this 12 million that you need to get to. At the moment, you're at 3 million. Continue, you'll be at 9. Big problem. So I said, before we start, I want to make sure that this is the most important problem for everybody around the table. And there's 2 little tricks that you can use if you're working with yourself or with your team. The first one is get everybody to say, what will be the pain if we can't close the gap? How will this personally impact you? Not just the business, but you, your team, if we can't close the gap. And many of them said, we're not going to have jobs. We're going to pay penalties to the customers because we're going to be running late. The investors will take money away, so we won't be funded. So we went around the room, and that made it personal. Because often in the crisis stage, people are fighting against each other. There's a lot of disharmony, and you need to find a way to bring them all together. What's the simplest way to do them is to show that nobody's winning here. Everybody will lose if we can't fix this problem. The second thing I did, because you need to lift up the energy, right? To say, imagine in 8 months' time, we've caught up. Tell me how this will benefit you. And go around the room again. So first thing is, if in a crisis, it means there's a gap that feels impossible to catch up on. So what's the pain if we can't? What's the gain if we can? That's a great way to start, whether it's a personal crisis or business crisis or relationship crisis. Have that discussion with yourself, with your team, with your partner.
Beautiful.
So we started with that, and that lifted up the spirit. And I said, okay, we're only going to do 2 things. And to be honest with you, I didn't know what number 2 was. But it felt like if I said one thing, it would have been insufficient.
Okay, so you tell this group of coal miners, and I'm imagining big, rough guys.
Huge guys.
And you're very svelte, South African, very nice, chic glasses. And so you're speaking to this room of like rough men, and you said, we're going to do 2 things. You don't remember the second thing, but the first thing.
No, I didn't know the second thing. Never mind. I don't remember it. I literally didn't, but it just felt like I needed to have at least 2 things, right? The first thing I was pretty sure of, and this is, imagine you're in a situation where you don't have enough of something to catch up. So there's a constraint. You don't have enough market.
I have that every day, Dr. Allen.
We all have, right? You either don't have enough demand, which wasn't true in their case. They just didn't have enough capacity or capability to meet the demand. It could also be that you don't have enough supply, some external resource, or not enough cash. So those are typically the constraints of your business, and you should follow them in that sequence. So I said to them, okay, if you have a resource that you don't have enough of, what's the first thing that you need to do is to stop wasting that resource. Right? First thing you should do. So what I asked them to do is I said, we've just agreed that the problem is we are fallen behind and we need to catch up. What I'd like you to do is on a flip chart, write down for me all the initiatives that is currently demanding your budget and your attention and your team's attention. Those are the two scarcest resources. On a personal level, it's our limited attention because the demand on our attention will always exceed available attention. And for the company, it's the budget, right? Management attention. So they kept on writing and we started sticking them up on a wall. So imagine this big boardroom with these big guys. Anybody that's watched South African rugby can imagine what these guys look like, right? I felt small. And we got them, when I got to about 100, I stopped them, right? So imagine, just for you personally or for the listeners or viewers, think about all the things that's currently taking up your time and attention and budget, right? It's not uncommon that you'll have 100 of those. So we got them stuck up, and then I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We just agreed that the one problem we have to solve is to catch up, right? We have to get more tons. So we have a goal to produce 12 million tons. We have a constraint in that we're not producing enough tons. We have a problem. We have to figure out how to get more tons. That's it, right? So I said, can you go to every one of the flip charts and write at the bottom of the flip chart, how many more tons will that initiative give you? And you can imagine what happened. By far the majority would have no direct contribution. And this is how we waste our limited attention. We're so busy with solving many problems of which most don't matter. Right? Giving
we are
attention
so busy solving problems that don't matter to the end goal.
Yeah, and it's not just problems, it's also people. We are so busy spending time with people that's not going to help us get to our goal. So the first thing to do was I pointed that out to them, that of these 100 initiatives, there were just 5 of them that actually would make more tons. There were another 5 that they had to do because it was compliance issues, safety regulations, but 90 of them didn't contribute, and we agreed to stop those. And it was like a massive pressure lifted off their shoulders. It's like the focus was just bam. So now I'm stuck because now I have to get to number 2. What am I going to do with number 2? So I thought, okay, let me just trust my intuition. Let me see where this takes me. I have this framework, which is where's the constraint or the bottleneck, right? I knew that was the key thing, is finding out where's the bottleneck so we can focus on strengthening that weakest link to make the whole chain stronger. So I've asked the first person that's in charge of basically exposing the ore of coal. That was the first step in their process of producing coal. It's like basically remove all the overburden, expose the ore of coal. I said, come up here. I said, okay, so let's do some calculations. You're currently producing only 750,000 tons a month. You have to get to 1 million, but remember you're behind, so you have to get to like 1.125 million. How are you going to do it? So imagine this big guy standing in front of you, and it's like, how are you going to do it? And he looks at me and he goes, it's effing impossible. Now, what do you say? At that stage of my life, this was in the early 2000s, I had no mining experience, 0, right? And that's many of us as entrepreneurs, you somehow find yourself in a business and you don't really understand the game.
Amen.
Right? And you have to figure it out. So I'm standing there and there's no magic wand or silver bullet that I can give them. And this guy's telling me it's impossible. And in that moment, this question popped up. And it's a question that changed everything for me. I said to him, it's impossible unless. And I realized in that moment what happens is many of the things that become our constraints are protection mechanisms. It's trying to protect us from dying physically or emotionally. More and more now it's about protecting ourselves against emotional death and not physical death. But it's the same mechanism. So when you say that something is impossible, it's a way of protecting yourself from failing. Because why would I try if it's impossible, right? So it not only stops me from trying, it stops me from thinking about trying. It's really an effective protective mechanism. So how do you overcome that? If I say...
Okay, hold on,
Yeah.
Dr. Allen. When we say that's impossible, it's a protective mechanism against ego.
Yeah.
We don't want to fail, so we say it's impossible. And the minute we say it's impossible, we make it impossible.
Absolutely.
And then you will now shift from when somebody says that's impossible, you say that's impossible unless.
Question mark.
Question mark, because you're inviting us to figure out, I would need this.
Yeah.
So then what happens now when you say unless?
So immediately you're switching the brain now at the subconscious level, because the brain is there to validate our assumptions and beliefs, right? So as soon as we say something is impossible, it immediately will find evidence to say, yep, you're absolutely right. This is absolutely impossible. Why would you even try it? But as soon as you say it's impossible unless, it's the question that moves the assumptions, beliefs from our subconscious into the conscious mind. Questions are incredibly powerful. So as soon as you say it's impossible unless, you're forcing the assumptions or beliefs that made us feel it's impossible to bring it to the conscious mind. Because now I'm challenging you. Please give me all the reasons why it's impossible, right? But it's put in a positive way.
That's right.
It's impossible unless, what are the conditions that could make the impossible possible? And this guy just stared at me, and I was staring at him. It felt like minutes. It was probably a couple of seconds, but it was very uncomfortable. Imagine we're surrounded by guys. Everybody's looking at us. And this guy was one of the most senior people, and he's like, it was fucking impossible, and now it's impossible unless. And he looked at me and he said, okay, I'll play your game. I said, great, let's go. He said, it's impossible unless, and he pointed to this group of guys. He said, unless it was these idiots, and they turned out to be the accountants, I could convince them. I said, about what? He said, there's this area that if I explored that, I could flood the next operation with so many tons, they wouldn't know what to do with it. I said, so why don't you do that? He said, they telling me it's bloody unprofitable. So I said, okay, let's do the numbers together. Let's see. And that was the second thing I discovered. So one of the things that make it hard when we make decisions is we fear uncertainty. So when we think about benefit versus cost, right, is imagine I'm trying to sell you something. I'm asking you to make a decision to buy my product or service. And I say to you, Jasmine, the benefit is 20, the cost is only 10. You really should get it, right? For me, it's a no-brainer because you're getting 2x. But what happens in the buyer's mind is the buyer is looking for certainty. And what they've learned is that there's a lot of uncertainty in benefits. So when they say 20, it's probably only 10. And there's a lot of certainty around cost. When they say it's 10, it's probably 20. So as the seller, I'm thinking this is a positive, and as a buyer, it's a negative, right? So how do you help somebody make a decision when there's uncertainty involved? And the simplest way to do that is think about worst case. Worst case benefit, worst case cost.
Okay.
So if the worst case benefit is still much greater than the worst case cost, it's a hell yes decision. Do you agree?
I agree.
So that's what I got him to do. I said, tell me what is the worst case benefit that we'll get if we can mine that operation. And we did the numbers together, and he said, I can go from 750 to probably $1.2 million tons.
Worst case.
Worst case benefit.
1.2 million tons of coal. Worst
of
case
coal.
scenario.
Yeah, so I can basically go from 750, add another 500,000 tons to that. We said, what's the numbers? Multiplied by $100 per ton, $50 million, right? Now I said, okay, so tell me the worst case cost to be able to do that. And he said, it's a lot and we don't have budget. I said, let's just go through the numbers. He said, well, I'll have to hire this piece of equipment, that piece of equipment, get these people. Worst case cost was $5 million. Now, for him, he never even asked for this, because why ask if somebody will just say no? Because remember, you're budget constrained, you're not achieving your target, there's no budget. So that's another part of this. When we think it's impossible, is because we think somebody else will say no, and there's no way we can convince them. So why even bother asking rather than just doing the numbers? And that really opened it up. So suddenly we turned to the accountants. We said, guys, can you help us out? We can give you a bare minimum of 50 million positive benefit. Maximum cost is 5 million. Would you go for it? No, it's a no-brainer.
That's a no-brainer.
Absolutely no-brainer. And then all that we did is we repeated that same exercise with all the other links in the chain, all the other steps. It's impossible for you to catch up unless. And what happens in that unless condition is we start problem solving. We're starting to come up with all the reasons, right? It's like, think about, say you launch a new book and I say, Jasmine, how many do you think you'll sell? And say, well, most books don't sell their first print. That's how bad it is, right? So if you're selling a few thousand, you're already doing really well. And you might say, if I could sell 10,000 or 50,000, that would be amazing. And I would ask you, I want you to set an impossible goal, right? So keep on increasing either the magnitude or reduce the time you give yourself until you say, now it's impossible. And then I'm going to ask you, it's impossible unless. And what will happen is those few unless conditions will immediately pop up.
I have to tell you, in researching, doing the deep dive research in preparation of the podcast, I heard that the unless question, and I have used it 4 times in the last 2 weeks when somebody said I couldn't do that or that was impossible, and they solved. Because all of a sudden we had something that was solvable. If you tell me it's impossible, okay, I can't do anything with that. You say it's impossible unless, and then you give me this totally far out that would never happen, and then we could say we could make that happen. Here are the steps to make it happen, and it became a self-fulfilling prophecy that it was the unless component that I then became to solve for. And then secondly, after doing the research, you had asked the coal miners, what is our one goal?
Yeah.
And it forced me to look internally on the team. And I assumed that the team knew what's our one big, massive goal for 2026. And so I sent everybody an individual message. And I said, can you please reply? While I don't need the details, please be specific.
Yes.
And I'm really proud that the team all responded that we knew what the goal was. And there was one team member who maybe didn't have as much close proximity to the financial outcome that we were going for. And it allowed me the opportunity to say, you're not dreaming big enough. This is going to require a different version of you to get this outcome. And she immediately got on board. And so I just want to say that I started immediately implementing with myself. I have a big goal for 2026 on a personal front. And I immediately said, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't spend that. It's an investment for me. I can't spend that every month. I can't spend that every month. And then I asked myself, well, I can't spend that unless what? What needs to be true? And then I just reversed engineers financial numbers and growth that we would need to do. And then I said, okay, I think we can do that. So I'm going to earn myself to overcome the impossibility. So that's why I wanted you on the podcast, because I was out here like home spinning this for myself, but for people to hear that you did this with coal miners, and then you've done this with entrepreneurs, and you've done this with states, you've done this with countries. Thank you. Thank you for helping us get out of our own way and asking ourselves, unless. Okay, so if we want to hit our goal, one of the things that getting into specific alignment, you had said, if you want to hit a goal and you maybe have like a small team or a few people around you, you said, what do you need to stop doing? Can you expound more on the importance of, if we singularly focus on our goal, and people will say, well, this is really important. But how do you create that hierarchy? Okay, team, we're stopping to do this. So I told the team we're going to be stopping something in 2026, and all of their jaws were on the floor.
Right.
They're like, it doesn't make sense. So how could I have gotten better at communicating? This makes us money. This is good. We're going to stop doing it because it's a distraction from the big goal.
Yes. So we all know the power of focus.
Yes.
Right. We all know we should focus, but most of us don't. Right. And some of it is because of ADHD and other characteristics, and others is because we're just not clear enough about what we really want. So I'll give you an example of how important it is. Say I asked you, Jasmine, how long will it take you to do a one-day task?
Oh, one-day task?
Yes. How long will it take you?
Well, wouldn't it take me one day?
So the right answer would be it depends.
Okay.
But it depends on two things. The first one is the variability in the task itself. Because when I say one day, it means on average it should take you a day, right?
Okay.
Now, best case scenario, you might find it's a little bit simpler than what you expected, or you were actually more skilled than what you expect. Could do it in half a day.
Okay.
Or it's a bit more complicated, could take 2 days.
Okay,
But that's
fair.
normally the level of variability around a task, a specific thing. The other it depends on how busy you are.
Yes.
Right? So if you had nothing else on your plate, on average, it would take you a day because you could start immediately. But what if you were 50% busy already? Well, now the task will take 2 days because one day will be waiting for you to finish what you're working on, and then another day to do the task.
Right.
What if you're 80% busy? So now it has to wait 4 days in queue for the other things that's occupying your time and attention and budget, and then the one day doing. So it takes 5 days. What if you're 90% busy? The same one day task will take you 10 days. And here's the killer. What if you're 99% busy already? It will take 100 days. And I want to get you to think about this. How many times has it taken you 100 days to get a one-day task done? And that's because we are too busy doing stuff that we shouldn't be doing.
Ooh, that hurts.
I know it
hurts
all
because
of
it's
us.
so true.
Yeah. And that's why that first step has to be, after you've set this goal that's so ambitious, it forces the mind to focus, right? And then it says, well, what will block me from focusing on solving the most important constraint or problem is because I'm busy doing other stuff.
That's right.
But now I have a reference point that says, this number one on my list, will it help me get there? No, stop it. Or at least freeze it. Number 2, will it help me? No. Or just a little bit. No, I need big steps, right? That's why that step 1 of what to stop doing is so critical.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I hate that. I hate it.
I know.
I hate it, but it's so right and it's so true.
It's so fun to start things. It's so hard to stop things.
Absolutely.
So fun to say yes, so hard to say no or not now.
Especially, and I might add to this, especially when something is successful. On paper, we have a lot of ventures that are very successful and that are contributing like profitably.
Yes.
But they are a distraction to the much big step that we need to take in a different direction. And so that's hard.
It is hard.
It is hard. And I feel after listening to a lot of your work and then this conversation, I'm confirmed. Last night at dinner, I was talking to my husband and I said, I think we need to stop this. And he said, how did you get to that decision? I logically laid it out. And he said, great. So why haven't you already cut it? And I said, well, because I want optionality. So I don't need to make the decision now. So I'm going to wait till the very end because I need to see how the year is shaping up. And he said, it sounds like you're dwelling in a place of hedging your bets.
Yes.
And I was like, well, absolutely. 100.
Right. But we have to understand optionality first, right? So what is a good option? A good option, if you think about option traders, right? They're really good at selecting options.
Yes.
Right? So they buy options. So what are they doing? They're looking for an option that has a big upside if it works and a small downside if it doesn't.
Yes.
That's a hell yes option.
Yes.
Right? The hell no option is one that has only a small upside if it actually works and a huge downside if it doesn't.
Okay.
those are the ones that we absolutely should stay away from. And
Well, those
stop
are easy
doing.
for me. I'm the queen of no.
Right.
My friends will call me the queen bubble popper because they'll come up with like, I like this idea. I was like, no, it won't work.
Yeah.
It's the ones that for me are, there is a positive upside. And even if it wasn't as good, it's not that much of a low side.
Okay, but I want to challenge you a little bit. if
Please
you allow
do.
me.
Oh, one, this is not in my notes. It's making me a little uncomfortable, but okay.
So thinking about that it might not work is not a good way of deciding whether it's a good option or not.
Or it might not be as profitable.
Okay, let me give you two extreme examples.
Okay.
You have an option to play the lottery or Russian roulette.
Okay.
Okay, so lottery, very, very big upside if you win.
Yes.
Right? Very small downside if you lose. You lose a couple of dollars, right?
Yes.
But what's the probability of winning? Is almost zero. But is it a good option? Yes, because it has a huge upside if it works, very small downside if it doesn't. Whereas if we evaluate it by the probability of success, because again, we're trying to protect ourselves from failing, we might have given up on that. Now compare that to Russian roulette. What's the odds of winning? It's 5 out of 6. There's not many things in life that you have such high odds in your favor, right? So because we are so drawn to certainty, we might inadvertently pick options that are actually like Russian roulette. Why is it such a bad option? Because what's the upside if we win? We stay alive. We were alive before we started, right? What's the downside if we lose? We lose
die.
our head, which is kind of an important part, right? So it's all about us not thinking about the probability of success, it's thinking about the impact of success that makes all the difference. So when you give that framework to yourself and to your team, it'll help you and all of us select better options.
Dr. Allen, I feel very annoyed right now. I feel annoyed because it's so clear.
Yeah.
It's so clear. And I came in with this example that I have this conversation with my husband, but what it brought up for me were 3 other things. 3 other things that the upside is not the lottery ticket. Everything that I am deciding between, I am in a place in my life where I want the lottery ticket life.
Yeah.
And I'm playing the lottery while having 2 Russian roulette opportunities in my back pocket. And I'm not thinking about it that way.
Yeah.
Hot dang. Hot dang.
There's another thing about setting really big goals that are so ambitious that feels impossible. So there's a story behind that. I don't know if you've read Dr. Benjamin Hardy's and Dan Sullivan's book.
Okay. Number
10X
1,
is
had
easier than
Dr.
2X.
Benjamin Hardy on the podcast. Check out that. It was one of the he was on the podcast in late 23. He has one of the highest podcasts in all of 23 and almost 24. I will link it in the show notes. But yes, big fan. Love him.
So I was at the Joe Polish's Genius Network. He had invited me to speak on the stage, which I was super, super honored about. And we were setting up for the interview. And Joe said, while we're setting up, I'm just going to ask the audience, I want you to think about 3 things that can increase the profitability of your business, because there's a group of entrepreneurs, can increase the profitability of your business by 10%. Think of 3 things, right? So we continue setting up and we're about to start up. And he says, oh, by the way, Dr. Barnard, what did you think of my question? And I said, it's actually a very bad question. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, how many ways are there to increase the profitability of your business by 10%? There are many, many, many ways, right? I can increase it by increasing my selling price, by increasing the volume that people buy, the frequency that they buy, the variable cost reduction, operating expenses. There's so many ways. I said, so if as entrepreneurs, we are trying to find the one thing to focus on,
It's difficult.
using percentage as an improvement target is a really bad idea. Whether it's 10% or 100%, it's still too small, which means there's too many opportunities. And I'll get back to having the 100 list, of things that I'm working on. Because each of them can help a little bit. And a cent plus a cent plus a cent plus a cent will finally accumulate to a fortune? No, it can never.
So Joe asked the group, how can you increase your profitability by 10%?
Yes.
And then you even said, you took it a step farther and said, if you would ask them, how do they increase their profitability by 100%? You said that that's still too much?
It's too still. So I said the right question would be, ask them, is there one thing that can increase your profitability by 10x, not 10%, or by 100x, not 100%?
Wow.
And I said, so think about that. How many ways are there to increase your profitability by 10x? There's very few. There might only be one. But that forces the brain to find that one. Because even if you are only 50% successful, it's still 5x or 50x, right? So that's the other element of it, it's really important to set very, very ambitious goals to the point where everybody says now it's impossible for two reasons. One is that it will help you to find that one thing.
Yes.
The other thing is, I want you to think about what happens when we say that the goal is realistic. Why do we say that something is realistic? It's because we think we know how to do it. Else we wouldn't call it realistic, right?
Right.
But that means we won't think out of the box.
Correct.
It's only when we set a goal that's absolutely impossible, and then we ask ourselves it's impossible unless that we think completely out of the box. So those are two really, really strong reasons to set very, very important and high goals, but there's a warning with it, both for yourself and for your team. Do not confuse a target with a commitment. A target is inspirational. It gets us to think out of the box. A commitment is the minimum we have to deliver.
Ooh.
When we turn a commitment into a target or vice versa, it immediately becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. People will argue and fight to get the target to become lower and lower, and then you're stuck.
Don't confuse the target for the commitment. So this feels like a very good segue.
Yes.
We're talking about 10x thinking. We're talking about that being a forcing function to cut away all the other noise and say, this is the thing I'm going to focus on, because even if I only reach half of that, it's still better than any of the other options or paths that we could have chosen to. Okay. Now, when I say this, a lot of entrepreneurs are overwhelmed and they feel very overloaded. And so when we're all of a sudden getting down to the things that we could be doing, we're lessening it, but it also helps us or impedes us from making good decisions. Because all of a sudden we're like, okay, there's so many factors.
Yes.
Can you explain why and how we can make good decisions faster? So what if I had this like 10x idea and I was like, okay, I can get down into maybe there's like 2 or 3 and all of a sudden I'm paralyzed between, well, which one do I choose? How do I make a better decision faster?
Right. So I want to go back to that 100-day, one-day task,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So the first thing that we want to do there is, how do I get a one-day task to take 1 day,
Yes.
not 100 days?
Yes.
Is don't overload yourself.
Well,
That's a key thing.
I mean, yes.
So stop, constantly evaluate what's on your to-do list and just stop most of them. Because unless you do that, everything will take 100 days. That's the problem, right?
Right.
Every one-day task will take you 100 days. And stuck in some of those 5 tasks out of the 100, those are the ones that really, really matter, that can change everything for you. So by stopping the 90 at least, will release a lot of capacity. And now a task that used to take 100 days can take 10 days or 5 days or maybe 1 day. So that's the first part. When it comes to decision making, so imagine I have these few options left, and I still have to pick between them.
Yes.
So there, a really useful framework to use is a framework that Jack Canfield popularized in his book, Success Principles. It's E plus R equal O. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No.
So E plus R equal O. So E stands for events. So these are the things that happen to us. They can be positive or negative. You can think of them as stresses in our life. Could be a positive or negative stress. They're typically out of our control. Can we influence them? Probably, but they're typically out of our control. The R is for response. And the O is for outcome. Right? And what Jack Canfield used this formula, he said that the number one principle of success is to take 100% responsibility for the outcomes that you get in your life. If you blame the events, you can never move forward, because then you completely expose the randomness of life, right? So what I do with that formula to help even kids make better decisions is to say, let's have some fun. Let's look at the math behind this, right? So imagine a positive event happens to you and you have a positive response. So I say, Jasmine, wow, you look beautiful today. And you say, thank you so much. My energy levels was a little bit down. That really made me feel positive. So it's a double positive outcome, right? When you have a positive event, but a negative response, so I give you the same compliment, and rather than responding positively, you go, what do you want? Right? It kills it. If there's a negative event, imagine I criticized you. And rather you defending or attacking back, you go, oh my God, sounds like you're having a bad day. How can I help? It wipes it out. Negative event, negative response, double negative, right?
Got it.
That when it comes to decision making, this is as a sort of a decision making 101 that we teach the kids. It's a really good formula to think about it, because it also helps us to think about the mistakes that we can make, right? First mistake is with an E, is we don't distinguish between noise and signal. Noise is all the things that are happening that we shouldn't respond to, but we are. How can I stop most of that? The signal is those 5 things or 3 things that I should concentrate on. When it comes to the R, that's where it gets deep. We often don't respond, but we react. We make about 35,000 decisions every day, which is, based on what you said previously, is where part of the overwhelm comes from.
Right.
We are completely overwhelmed. And unfortunately, women suffer from this much more than men. There's something called decision fatigue. It was picked up first when I studied parole board judges, and I tried to figure out what gives a judge the reason for granting parole or not. And what I noticed is, beginning of the morning when court starts, about 60% of people get parole. Before lunch, 0. It's like, what the hell is happening? Is there some bias? Are they scheduling the court with all the easy cases in the front and then the most difficult? And I found out it's decision fatigue. So as you are fatiguing your mind, it gets overwhelmed. It will default to the safest possible decision, which is, in that case, don't grant. But in our lives, it's don't take action. That often feels like the safest decision. And women struggle with this much more than men, simply because you're making many more decisions than we do. You're thinking about everybody, including like what to wear. Woman thinks about that for an hour a day. Most men, 5 minutes, right? So that's the part is why do we react? Is because we feel overwhelmed, and then we react emotionally. So we over or underreact. And that's the biggest mistake we should prevent. It's to say, of all these decisions that I'm making every day, the majority of them don't matter. That's the good news. They really don't matter. What I'm wearing, what I'm eating, how I get to work, but there's a few of them that really matters a lot. And those are the ones that we want to think about. Right, so Daniel Kahneman wrote the famous book, Thinking Fast and Slow. He called it System 1 and System 2. He said System 1 is our fast and automatic mode of thinking, right? You're not even thinking about it. System 2 is our slow and more deliberate way of thinking. So if it's a really important decision, the worst advice that you can get is to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, decide. It's terrible advice. I cringe every time I hear somebody give that, because it's only valid under one condition. When you have built up so much intuition about that subject that it becomes instinctive.
Got it.
Right? But if you don't, if you are new to it, the worst thing is to trust your gut. You haven't put in the 10,000 hours to become an expert. Rather phone somebody that has that expertise. So the first mistake is the events. We respond to things we shouldn't. The R part is we react, we don't respond. So how can I slow myself down? And often that comes from being comfortable with not knowing. As soon as I realize I don't know what the best response is here, I need to think about it. Mm-hmm. That gives me that space, that small little space that I need to get into flow. I don't know if you know that there's 5 Fs when it comes to stress responses.
Fight,
Yeah.
flight, freeze, and that I don't know the other 2.
Yeah, so the easiest way to remember it is imagine you're in the wild and there's something really dangerous coming your way, right? The safest option is to flee. If you can, flee. Right? If that's not an option, then it's freeze. Stand still, hope they don't notice you.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Number 3 is fawning. So it's different from freezing. It's actually playing along, being completely subservient, pleasing them, and hoping that they won't kill you.
Okay.
Right? Which is often the best option, right? Then if that doesn't work and they're really starting to attack you, then you have to fight. Those are the 4 instinctive Fs of stress responses. But there's another one, which I know is an important word for you, flow.
Oh.
Right? What does flow mean? It means pausing and igniting your cognition rather than intuition or instinct, which is the fast and automatic way. And let me think for a moment. Let me be conscious of what's happening around me and see what's the best possible response here. So when I'm in flow, I become hyper-productive, hyper-creative. But it requires that pause. And I can pause by breathing, by just taking a deep breath. I can pause by saying, I don't know what the best response is. Let me think about it, right? Whatever you need to do to get you to pause, that triggers the system 2. Makes you think about it. Oh. What are my options here? What is the best option?
Okay. Events plus response equals outcome.
Yes.
My greatest opportunity, I have become so much more honed, much to the chagrin of many of the people who I've been friends with, is now I know the signal versus noise. I've cut a lot of noise out of my life.
Yeah.
By cutting out noise, I've also cut out people and time spent with people, and that's been difficult. But now my signal is so clear. Right. What I need to do the deep work on is not having a reaction, but a response.
Let me clarify.
Please.
So I don't set confusion. If you have built up enough intuition about something, enough instinct, you should react in fully automatic mode. Mm-hmm. It's when you haven't that you should respond. Where you want to think deeply. So it's slowing down your thinking will help you make a faster decision.
And you know, for me, it's deeply ingrained, and it's from childhood. It has been conditioned that I'm the eldest of 5 children in an immigrant family, and I had taken on a lot of responsibility. And so when you have so much responsibility, and my mom battled cancer for 9 years, and so I stepped into the family in that role, it was to have the reaction Jasmine will always have the reaction. She'll know what to do. And what I've done is carried that into business, and I feel like people are deeply responsible to me on the team for the vision, and so I'll give a reaction, and I need to have the courage to say, I don't know. Give me a second.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, when I can slow down, I make a much better decision. And I receive this because I want different outcomes. I do.
Yeah. And part of that is just feeling confident that you can trust yourself.
Yep.
And trust those people around you.
Yep.
You know, that allows you to slow down your thinking a little bit.
Ugh. Yeah. And the 5 Fs, flee, freeze, fawn, fight, flow. Flow.
Yeah, so when should I go into flow is when it's really important, right? That at least I should take a few seconds or maybe minutes or an hour to really think about it. So the last mistake is what happens with the O. And that to me was very interesting. Very few people think about what they really want. And it turns out that that's massively important to decide how to respond.
Good God.
Right? It's like, I remember it's like you have kids that are naughty, right? And then you say, stop throwing the ball, you're going to break something. And then you hear the vase falling over and breaking, right? And now you react, right?
Yes.
Because you want to teach them a lesson, right? Versus pausing for a moment and saying, what do I really want from this? The vase is broken,
Right.
right? I want him to really learn the lesson. If I react emotionally, if I act angrily, they're going to lose respect for me and forget about the bloody lesson, right? So I had this with my two boys. My ex-wife would react. She'd get very angry because she would warn them, to stop throwing balls around in the house, and then something would break, right? And she would say, go to your dad. So I'd be sitting in the office and the two would walk in and I would say to them, okay, so tell me what happened. And I would point to each other, right? And I said, okay, so what do we need to learn from this, right? And what punishment do you think would be appropriate? Because we want to make sure that you remember this and never do this again. And they start fighting against each other, what the best punishment, right? And I'm just sitting there and watching this play. But they give a punishment that they think is fair, and then they learn the right lesson. So we also need to think about that as every event that happened and we responded. Did we think about what the outcome is that we really wanted? And did we do a debriefing afterwards to say, did we get what we really wanted or needed? And in the future, if I get another event like that, is there a better way to respond?
I received that with such profundity because I had a conversation with our COO and we were talking about our growth projections. Mm-hmm. And there was a point, like an inflection point without additional staffing, that we would be having more revenue, but at a lower profitability percentage.
Right.
And so when I go back and I track to the outcome isn't more revenue. The outcome is a certain percentage of profitability as indicated by me.
Yes.
And I was like, that makes no sense.
Yes.
And had I only looked at the factors, right? So I'm having my signal, I'm having the event, money, and then having a response, very good. But what was the outcome? Yes. The outcome was a certain percentage of profitability that's important to me. And I think that now having this equation to anchor that in, I have a better communicative style of saying, that's great, but it's going against the thing that we ultimately want.
Yeah, and that's so important because another thing that we kind of intuitively, subconsciously do as business owners is we start confusing the means with the end.
Yes.
We start thinking about my job is to keep everybody busy, right? No, my job is to create a company that has high value. And
yes.
Profitability is a key part of that. The multiple I can get is another key part, and eliminating risks that can increase my multiples. But when you start thinking about, I'm looking at everybody, is everybody busy? Do I keep everybody busy? The coal mines is the same. They try to keep all the resources busy, right? Everybody's producing tons, but most of those tons are not needed now. They're just trying to keep busy. And it's the busyness that causes everything to take much longer and everything to be done much less than what we can. So if you think about that, imagine every person in your company is 99% utilized, right? Everything will take years to complete. If they are sitting there waiting for you to assign them that 1 or 2 or 3 tasks that are most important, things will flow.
Good Lord.
Right? You don't want work to be waiting for resources. You want the resources to be waiting for the right work and get it done as fast as possible with the best quality, lowest cost, and get it to flow.
Dang. One thing that we started before the cameras were rolling,
Yeah.
I said, what is the win? Like, what's the win? And many people will sit here and say, oh, I would like to point people to my podcast, or I would like to have more people on my newsletter list, or I'd like to have them to sign up for this thing. And when you sat in the chair across from me, you said, Jasmine, the only thing I want is to empower people to make better decisions faster.
Yeah. When it really matters. That's the important part to add to that. Because most decisions don't matter, but there's a few that really do. And it's getting those right that makes all the difference. Being able to know what is a hell yes decision and a hell no decision. Everything in between probably doesn't matter.
So one of the things that we were talking about was you have, of the many things you do, you have a series of apps that help people live in harmony. Can you explain how? Okay, so it's harmonyapps.com, but how did you decide to name the company that? I really like the idea of the naming behind it.
So, as I mentioned, I'm passionate about helping people make decisions. So we're trying to understand in my research lab, why do we make and often repeat bad decisions? And part of it is we don't realize the consequences fully. It's that crisis thing. We actually in crisis almost all the time. So you want to understand, why is it that we make bad decisions? And there are different reasons. One is we are more emotional than what we think, right? So we don't rationalize and then we decide. We decide and then we rationalize. We find reasons to justify what we've done rather than thinking through it. Another thing is like thinking about the overwhelm side. That's why some of the apps that we build is digital twins that can help us model a full supply chain. A recent example would be, Ralph Lauren came to us and said, we're experiencing shortages and surpluses in our retail stores. What is the bad decision that is causing that? And with a digital twin, we can go back and say, this buyer bought this amount of goods at that price to get a price reduction, but now it caused us to sitting with too much, etc. So all of that is the range of apps that we've developed is called Harmony. And the reason for that is that when we are making bad decisions or when we are procrastinating and making a good decision, it causes disharmony. It hangs over us like a dark cloud and follows us around. So when we are able to make a better, faster decision, it brings harmony back in our life, with our partners, and at work.
I love that. So dralanbarnard.com and harmonyapps.com. So entrepreneurs are the vast listeners of the show. Where would you go? Where would they go to get more information on how to learn more about the research you're doing and what you are putting out in the world?
So before I get there, one more thing.
Please.
So we said there's three things. There's the goals we set.
Yes.
There's the decisions we make. And then there's the actions that we take.
Ooh.
Right? So I don't want to leave without sharing
Thank
just
you.
one
Please
insight
do.
on the
Please.
actions to take. I learned this lesson from a business partner. No, we got involved in one of the largest SAP implementations, a big IT system, $5 billion implementation. After 6 months, they were already 6 months behind on a 5-year project, and consequences would have been horrible. I got engaged. We helped them figure out a few things that they can do. We were able to catch up and deliver the project on time. And the executive of this company took me out for dinner. And he said to me, thank you so much for what you've done. Do you have any questions for me? And I said, yes, I'm curious to know, what is it that I said that gave you the courage to take the action? So it takes courage to take actions, right? It takes courage to make decisions, but it takes even more courage to action those decisions. And what he said, I'd never forget. He said to me, there was one thing that you said. You said, we're going to do an experiment. You didn't ask me to make a change or improvement. You said, we're going to do an experiment for the next month. And I realized that we don't learn from experience. We learn from experiments, right? So if you think about touching a hot stove plate, right? As you touch it, it burns you. Imagine it burnt you a day later or a week later. How long will it take you to learn the lesson?
That's right.
So my last piece of advice is to think about every decision you make as an experiment to go and try. Create what I call a minimally viable experiment. So you get minimally viable product, which is a step further, but it's to be very clear what's the assumptions I want to test.
So good.
And what's the fastest feedback I can get.
So good.
Yeah, so another F that I can add is not just the flow part, but fast feedback. That's
a double F.
Double F, I'm sorry. So that to me is the essence of what I do is, how do we get into flow? How do we get the right response, get into flow when it really matters? And how do we get fast feedback?
Oh, so
Yeah.
good. It takes courage to make decisions, and it requires more courage to take action.
Take action. That's when the rubber meets the road.
And then when we tell ourselves we're going to take an action, we're not going to treat it as if it's the end all be all. When we take an action, all we're telling ourselves is this is an experiment. And we're going to learn from the experiment, and that will act as the gumption to get us to where we want to go.
Yeah, and a good experiment is one that I'm clear what assumptions I'm testing. So I assume that if we made this offer, we will sell more or they will pay more. Great. What's the fastest way we can test that assumption before we even build a product, right?
So good.
That's a key thing. So getting back to your question about the app. So we've built various apps. They're all under the harmonyapps.com. You can go there. So one of the apps is I took that E plus R equal O framework and took it to another level, because one of the challenges with response is I always have two options.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I can change something or not, or I can change one thing, change another thing. So I developed this method called the Procon Cloud, and there's an app there called Harmony Decision Maker, and that will help you to find out, is the problem that you're trying to solve really important enough? What's the options you have? What's the positives and negatives of each option? Because that's the other complexity. We think response equal outcome. There's always two responses and always two outcomes for every response. So it teaches you how to think about your options, what's the pluses of both and the minuses of both, and then pick the best option, one that gives me all the pluses without any of the minuses. So that's a Harmony Decision Maker app, and then we have a whole range of digital twins that people can use to model their process.
Do you see why I had this man on my podcast? He is a researcher that's coming in and teaching us how to make decisions, and then he's contextualizing it for entrepreneurs specifically. harmonyapps.com. To get more information about him, it's dralanbarnard.com. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. He flew in from Las Vegas today and is flying home back to his research lab today to serve you. So please do me a favor and leave a review for the podcast or connect at dralanbarnard.com. Dr. Alan Barnard, thank you for being here at the Jasmine Star Show.
Thank you so much. And I've just published a new book. It's called From Crisis to Catch Up to Keep Up. So it's available on Amazon. They're welcome to check it out.
Great. Check it out and leave the man a review, y'all. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.